Hello students and welcome to the e-learning program initiated by Sri Gyan Mandri Vidyapith for the students of Standard 9, in which we are learning the subject of English. Students, from the previous two lectures we have started with chapter number 7 of the main book, that is Behave. Let us take a quick recap of what we have learned in Behave chapter number 7. Name of the chapter is Packing, and it is written by the famous author Jerome K. Jerome. Jerome K. Jerome is uh, quite an hilarious author who writes in such a humorous way that we feel when we are reading all alone or we are reading it, yes, then we automatically see the fun in it. We laugh along with the uh, progress in the story and the ways the mistakes are made. These are common day-to-day mistakes that happens with everyone, but it has been written in such a way that creates laughter. So we can say that Jerome K. Jerome is quite famous for the hilarious ways in which he presents his stories, the humor that he creates in the story, and this chapter, Packing, has been taken as it is an extract. It is the small part of the book that he has written, Three Men in a Boat, where there are three main characters, that is uh, Jerome, the author himself, is the narrator of this um, particular extract and the chapter as a whole, and his two friends, George and Harris. All of them plan to go to an island, nearby island, and they are packing for a trip over there. Might be taking 2, 3, 4 days over there, staying over there, and enjoying nature in the closest way possible. All the three of them hitchhiking and hiking and trekking and all that, right? They want to be with nature, so they all plan to do that, and in order to go to the trip they need to do the packing. So uh, very lightheartedly, Jerome, that is the author narrator, he says he volunteers for the job of packing, and he says, I'll pack. Yes, I'll do the packing. Yes, when he says I'll do the packing, what he meant was that both Harris and George, they are supposed to do the packing because Jerome considers himself an expert packer, the best one in the world, and he will teach them how to pack. So both of the friends, they are going to do the packing, and what Jerome will do is to supervise. But both of them, they are also friends, and they take it very lightheartedly that yes, Jerome has volunteered, so both of them make themselves comfortable, sit down in the one on the chair, one on the table, and they start watching and observing what Jerome is doing in order to pack the bag. Now, Jerome is, of course, infuriated with that, quite angry. But now they didn't understand what he meant to say. He wanted to be the boss and they had to do the manual work. Instead, they left everything to Jerome. So he's angry, but then they are friends. So let them sit and enjoy, let them observe. They learn something from him because he's a good packer. And so he starts packing. Yes, forget something, again unpacks it, again packs it, again forgets something, again unpacks it. So 3, 4 times he has packed and unpacked, and at last he has done his part. Now there was a hamper lying over there because it is quite a long excursion on which they are going. So they need lots of food stuff too, because on that island no food is available. So they have to take that food stuff with them. So they decided to take a hamper along with them. This hamper is a big bamboo basket with lids on the top that can close, and all the things are quite safe in it. Yes, so they have to take all the utensils, or jar of oil, jar of jam, bread maybe, butter, eggs, tomatoes, all the food stuff, vessels for cooking, etc. They have to put in it, right? Kettle, etc. for tea, kettle. So in that way, now Jerome has done his part. Now it is the part of George and Harris to do it. Yes, and they said, okay, now you sit at one place, and because we two people, we are expert at packing also, so uh, we will finish it within no time, and we need quite a long time for us sleep because we need to get up early in the morning and start for the journey. So now you sit and relax, and we'll do the packing, right? So Jerome is more than eager to do that because now it is his turn to enjoy all the mistakes and errors done by these two people, and he's going to thoroughly enjoy it, because when he was doing it, they irritated him. So now it is his turn to irritate them and have all the fun. So George and Harris, they start with the packing of the hamper. The first thing that they do is break a cup. Second thing that Harris does is put a tomato and put a jar on top of it, squashing and smashing the tomato. Right? They have to take all the things out, again wipe clean everything, and then start packing. Then he spilled the salt on everything. Again, unpacking has to be done, cleaning has to be done. Then again, somebody put a pie and then heavy things on top of it, smashing the pie. Yes, and then again they have to unpack it, clean everything up, and meanwhile, George walked on the butter, and the butter stuck to the sole of his slipper, and he's walking all around with the butter sticking to the sole of his slipper. Right? When they want to pack the butter is nowhere to be found. Then notice that butter is on the slipper of under the slipper of George. So they don't have any time to go out and buy fresh butter. Yes, because the butter is already on the slipper. Right? So it's unhygienic, but then they have to do it. So they scrap it and they scoop it out and force that butter into a kettle. Now the mouth of the kettle is quite small and the butter wouldn't go in. So what happens is they try to push it. Now it's not going in, and whatever has gone in, it's not coming out. So they again scoop it, and George puts the butter on the chair. After that scooping work is done, cleaning work is done, now Harris went and sat on the chair. Now the butter stuck on him, and now they are searching for the butter. That is where we reached. So they are now finding butter. I'll take my oath. I put it down on that chair. Now George was the one, because Harris was scooping and George took all the butter, yes, and he put it on the chair. So he knows very well, George knows that butter was in his hand and he was the one who put the butter on the chair. Now where is the butter? I put it down on that chair, staring at the empty seat. Now the seat is empty because butter should have been there, but it's not there, right? And Harris also joins. Harris also says, I'll take an oath. I am also very sure that just before some while, I saw you putting that butter on the chair. So I saw you do it myself, not a minute ago. Just a few moments ago, you put the butter on the chair. Now where has it gone? Yes, there is only the one third party over there. That is Jerome, the narrator, author. Yes, now he didn't budge from his position. So he has not taken the butter. Now where is the butter? Gone. Then they started around the room again looking for it, and then they met again in the center and stared at each other. So both are facing each other. Both are searching the room, and again they meet face to face. So butter is on the bum, on the backside of Harris, but they do not see each other's back. They see face to face. So the butter is hiding at the back, and they search all over the room, meet again face to face, and butter is nowhere. Most extraordinary thing I ever heard of. Yes, butter, we know it melts. Yes, but these are cold countries, so butter is not going to melt that soon. And even if it melts, it doesn't evaporate, right? So melted, but it should be on the chair. Now the butter is not in the chair, on the chair. The butter is not to be found anywhere. So it is the most extraordinary thing. How can butter disappear on its own? So mysterious. Harris the person. He saw George put the butter just 1 minute ago, and then he forgot that he went and sat on the chair. Right? So he is also not knowing that butter is stuck behind him. So he says, so mysterious. Then George got around at the back of Harris and saw it. So meanwhile searching, he must have got around the back of Harris, and he saw the butter sticking over there. Why? Here it is all the time. We are searching it all over the room. We are searching it on the chair, and the butter is stuck on your pants. Where? Cried Harris. Now he's turning around. Now you can't see what is stuck on your back, right? So he keeps on turning around, trying to find the butter. He doesn't find it. Still, can't you, roared George, flying after him? Yes, as if the butter is going to fall down, right? yeah, if it is quite a big chunk, it's going to fall down. Yes, if the person moves and loses balance, the butter is going to fall down, right? So George says, "You just stand still one moment, one moment. Can't you stand still? The butter is on your back. It will fall down. Let me gather it from there." And who is going to eat that butter now? Yes, first it was on George's slipper. Now it's on the back of Harris. You know what's going to happen next. They are going to scoop it from there also, and then they are going to eat it. Yes, dirty fellows. And they got it off, packed in the teapot. Now, it won't go into the kettle. The teapot, it has a bigger mouth, right? So, now it is scooped, the size must have been small, so they fit it in the teapot. Montmorency was in it all, of course. Montmorency is the dog. Here we have a fourth character. Now, please pay attention. Montmorency is a pet dog, but here his description is quite vivid, quite colorful, and he has been given all the qualities of human beings. So, when you have to draw a character sketch of Jerome, where you have to draw the character sketch of George, when you have to draw the character sketch of Harris, at the same time, there will be one question where you have to draw the character sketch of Montmorency also, right? Because here he is treated as we know, pets, they are treated as family members. A name has been given to them, and the pet responds to that name, right? So all the actions done by the pet is to be considered as given a human quality, because uh, members of the family don't consider him as an animal. They consider the pet as the part of the family. Now, if you are part of the family, the rest of the family is human beings, so you treat the pets also in the same way. For example, we have food 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we also give the same, and at the nearly the same time to the pets also. We call it by name. It responds by the name called, and it comes to you. It plays with you. It has fun with you. You take him out for a stroll, right? So everything over here, the dog is always treated, the pet is always treated as a family member. So very, very important that we pay attention to all the actions done by Montmorency, because he is a pet dog. He was here all the while, but he is introduced now in this extract. So Montmorency was in it at all, because so much excitement is going on, and he has a uh, very bad habit of poking his nose everywhere. That pets always have. They keep on sniffing, and they keep on disturbing you in your work. They spoil the things that you are doing. Yes, because they want to be in the action along with you. Now, you don't accept that. He doesn't understand that, right? So, lots of humor is created when Montmorency pokes his nose or meddles in the work that is going on of packing. So that is explained very colorfully over here. Montmorency's ambition is life to get in the way and be sworn at. Very, very bad habit of the pet. His bad habit and his only ambition in life is to get in somebody else's way. And the person is going to swear on him, curse him, and then Montmorency is so happy, so excited, totally satisfied. Yes, today my day is done. I have achieved today's target of being in someone's way, disturbing a lot, and then when he gets disturbed, yes, he is going to curse you. For example, you are taking a tray full of glasses. Yes, because the tray is in your hand, you don't know what's coming in your feet. He will be sleeping over there. You know, at least where your pets sleep, you know those things very well. But when he sees, he will just move and he is going to trip you. So all the glasses of water on the floor, maybe the glasses broke, right? And you really curse the dog like anything. And then the dog is going to be happy. That is the meaning of this sentence over here. Montmorency's only ambition in his life was to get in somebody's way, trouble him, and then that person is going to curse him, swear at him, and then he will be very, very happy. If he can come in anywhere, wherever he is particularly not wanted, and be a perfect nuisance, then people get and make people mad. So, he has ways to be happy by meddling into somebody's affairs, by coming in somebody's way, getting sworn at, and he finds out these ways in a very perfect manner. He will he'll squeeze him, pets, they will squeeze him under your arm, under your legs, and they put their nose sniffing over whatever you're reading, you're trying to have some snacks, food, tea, something, right? They'll squeeze and come over there, right? And you don't like it. So either you bang his head or you say something to him, you scold him, right? And he's happy. And it's going to make you mad because you are doing some very important work. Suppose you are doing some drawing. Just because he touches his wet nose, cold wet nose on your arm somewhere, you suddenly give a jerk and that's going to spoil the drawing. Some colors may spill on it and then you are going to really get mad. And he likes that. He finds out way how people will get mad at him. And have things thrown at his head, then he feels his day has not been wasted. Today was a very exciting day. Yes, he will make people mad, and people, when members of the family, when they get mad, they'll throw cushions at him or whatever they lay their hands on, they're going to throw at him, and then he feels, yes, today's target achieved, my day is not wasted. I have done something today. So, it's a pet so we can understand. To get somebody to stumble over him, and these are the ways. Now what comes is, these are the various ways in which he comes in the way of people, makes them go mad, things thrown at him, and then he is satisfied. To get somebody to stumble over him, he will be lying at odd places. Right? We don't like that pet when he does that. But then, we know a part of the family. Right? So, we don't want to step on him. We feel something soft below our feet, immediately we fall. We have our hands, so it's okay. We fall. But what happens if we are carrying some things? That will also fall, and we will be off balance, right? And then we'll be cursing him. So that is what he does. To get somebody to stumble over him and curse him steadily for an hour. If things are broken, some important thing is spoiled, your work is spoiled, then after every 5 minutes, you are going to yell at that dog. You are going to shout at that dog. Yes, stupid dog, stupid this one. Yes, they have no manners. You're standing anywhere, sleeping anywhere. Yes, I'll put my feet on your tail. You're going to have pain and you're going to cry out. You're going to wail. And what happens if I put my feet on your neck, on your body somewhere? Yes, something is going to break. And every 5 minutes, you come up with something and you keep on yelling at. And then he'll be quietly just sleeping in one corner, listening to those things. And his day is done. His day is not wasted. Today, he has done something in his highest aim and his object. That is the highest aim and the object every day. He has to do something where people will curse him. And when he has succeeded in accomplishing this, his conceit becomes quite unbearable. Conceit, that satisfaction. It becomes quite unbearable. Yes, if that thing is not done, every day is not the same day, right? Somebody might not stumble over him every day. Yes, 1 or 2 times, 3 times, 10 times, then you know where you are going. You look on the floor where you are going before you walk so that you don't tramp over the walk or the dog, right? So, when he has succeeded in accomplishing this, that means where he has made somebody fall over him or trying to poke his nose somewhere and disturbed you, you start yelling at him, his day is done. And then you cannot just imagine. It's unbearable satisfaction that he gets. He came and sat down on things. Now we come back to the packing. This was just to tell you how Montmorency usually behaves in the house. Now, the dog also goes on the trip with them. Of course, you can't leave the dog behind. right? So during the packing, what he does is he goes and sits on things. He lies down. Two, three things are lying below him. So you want to pack those things now because Montmorency is lying on them. You don't find them. You pack everything. Then he will get up and walk away. Then you find three things lying over there. Yes, whom are you going to curse? You know Montmorency was lying down over there, and because he was doing that, you didn't see the things lying below him, and you forgot to pack it. So now you have to unpack again. He came and sat down on things just when they were wanted to be packed. When you are packing, you want all the things. All the things are lying over there. He came and sat on one or two things, and you didn't see them. When you want to pack, you don't find those things. And he labored under the fixed belief that whenever Harris and George reached out their hand for anything, it was his cold, damp nose that they wanted. Now, they have a hamper over there and all the things that needed to packing around them. So it's not quite, you don't have to stretch your hand too much to get hold of things and pack. So they know that salt and pepper small bottles, they are riding over there, right? So you just stretch your hand in order to get that salt bottle, right? And what you get in hand is that cold nose, wet cold nose of the dog over there. Yes, and you're going to curse him. He put his leg into the jam and he worried the teaspoons and he pretended that the lemons were rats and got into the hamper and killed three of them before Harris could land him with the frying pan. So he put his foot in the jam bottle, right? And then he has put that foot everywhere before somebody caught him and wiped it clean so that those marks on the ground that has also to be cleaned. Now the thing is, the dog has put his foot, it's quite dirty, into the jam, and then they are going to eat it, right? He put his leg into the jam and then he worried the teaspoons. The teaspoons were laid out properly, right? Yes, they were piled up together, right? And he disturbed them. Might be walking, it came in his feet, yes, and he disturbed the teaspoons that were lying. So again, they have to be collected, put together, and got into and pretended that the lemons were rats. That's a favorite pastime of the pet dogs. Yes, they are always in search of rats. They run behind them, try to catch them, just like cats, right? So here there is no rat, but he sees three lemons. They look like small balls, yellow balls to him, and he pretends that they are rats. And he sees them that they are already packed in the hamper. So he puts his mouth in the hamper and imagining that those those lemons were rats, he squeezed. That means he buried his teeth deep inside the lemons, crushing them, just tearing them into small pieces, or maybe whatever. Once when you poke the lemons, they are of no use. Yes, juice will be coming out of it. And got into the hamper and killed three of them. Killed three of them means that his teeth so deep at they are almost useless until you want to use them. Killed three of them until Harris saw that and he took a frying pan and hit him on the head. Then, of course, he's satisfied. Harris and I encouraged him. Yes? Now, the dog has to be pushed literally to do something. Yes, dog understands you very well. Dog understands some of the family members very well. Whom to play with, whom not to play with, whom to be naughty with, whom to be naughty not with. Right? So, because they are family, they're treated as family members, they know the nature of each and every person. So here, Harris and I, we are encouraging the pet to do something more troublesome so that George becomes angry at him. I didn't encourage him. A dog like that doesn't need any encouragement. I know the dog very well. Montmorency, I know him very well. So, I did not encourage him in trying to do something, some mishap, right? But I know very well that such dog doesn't need any encouragement. He will do all the wrongs himself and he will spoil the work done by George and Harris. It's the natural origin sin that is born in him that makes him do things like that. In short, he is a pet, but he is still an animal, though he's mannered, cultured as a pet. The members of the family treat him, even the friends and family of that family, they also treat the dog as a pet and as the part of the family. So I know him very well that he is born with these qualities of causing trouble and then being sworn at, screamed at, yelled at, things thrown at him, and then he will be satisfied. So I don't need to encourage him. It is in his very nature since his birth that he will always cause trouble and people will yell at him. So I don't need to do anything. He will do it all by himself without me encouraging him to do something. The packing was done at 12:50. Remember, it was 5 past 10 when Jerome finished his packing. Harris and George, two people, just a small hamper, and it took them nearly more than 2.5 hours to pack a small hamper. It was past midnight, even almost 1 hour past midnight, that they finished the complete packing. 10 o'clock, Jerome finished the packing for clothes, whatever personal things. And Harris and George, their duty was to pack the hamper. That took almost 3 hours, 10 to 11, 11 to 12, 12 to almost 1. They took 3 hours in packing and they called themselves one of the best packers in the world. So we can see the sorry state. All the three friends are equal. None of them are good at packing. But they pride in themselves that they are the best packers in the world. What they are in reality is they are complete fools. Even after so many packing, so many trips, so many journeys, they still don't know how to pack. They are completely unorganized. And on top of that, they have a very good pet who is very good at spoiling the things, spoiling the complete program, spoiling the complete planning by poking his nose everywhere and trying to disturb things, trying to sleep over things, and trying to come in the way, spoiling things and making the packing more and more harder. And Harris sat down on the big hamper and said he had hoped nothing would be found broken. It's really a mess. It's really a shortage of common sense. That hamper is usually made out of bamboo, and you have all the things that do not get crushed, that do not get broken, that are quite fragile, soft food items, you always keep on the top. He packed everything and then he sat on the hamper and he's thinking that he is sure and he hopes that he has broken nothing. Yes, weight of an adult on a hamper and that also on the top is certainly going to break lots of things. But here we see that he is least bothered. After you do such a lot of hard work, how can you spoil it within a second? Only totally foolish people can do so. George said that if anything was broken, it was broken, which reflection seemed to comfort him. Now, he just needed a small place to sit to take a breath because they had taken 3 hours, almost 3 hours in packing that hamper. When you have done such a lot of hard work, taken such a lot of long time in order to pack that hamper, when you close it shut and then you sit on top saying that nothing is broken, and if anything is broken, then it's broken. What can I do about it? Why should you go and sit over there on top of it? Yes, so this shows utter carelessness, negligence on the part of all the three. Because we saw that Jerome, whenever he did the unpacking and then the packing, he sat on that suitcase or bag, so that because lots of stuff is there and the bag is bulging like anything, overflowing. So he has to put his body weight on top of it so that the two ends meet and he can close it. There could be many things that can be broken over there also, right? But he doesn't care. He wants the packing to be done properly. But again, he's careless. Next, here we see a lot of hard work is gone in, but in a second of time, without that is totally unthoughtful thinking. Yes, after such a lot of hard work that you do in packing that wonderful hamper, you might have put eggs on the top, pie on the top, banana, some fruits, right? And tomatoes, etc., on the top so that they don't get squeezed, squashed, smashed if you put it inside, and quite a lot of heavy things on top of. You're taking lots of care while packing. Then when you pack it and close the lid, then you sit on top of it, smashing, crushing, breaking things, and you don't even care about it, and you speak it openly, I don't care, right? So these are all the qualities that are shown, and these qualities should be reflected in your answer when you are writing the character sketch or when you're drawing the pen portrait of that person. He also said that he was ready for bed. Now he's totally exhausted. I think it's George. Ah, it's George. George said now he's totally exhausted and they have to start early for the journey. So now he's going to bed. We were all ready for bed. Harris and Jerome. Jerome's work had already finished. He was already waiting for them to finish the packing so that they can go to bed. Harris was also the same. He had also finished and he was ready to go to bed. Harris was to sleep with us that night and we went upstairs. So it seems over here that George and uh, the author, that is Jerome, both of them must be living in that house, perhaps in that same room, and Harris must be living somewhere else. It's quite late in the night. Tomorrow morning they have to start early together. So it's no use. Now, Harris, all his stuff is also over here. So it's no use going back to home and then coming early tomorrow morning, next morning. Now it's already going to be morning, right? So Harris will be sleeping with us. That is clear by the statement that Jerome and uh, George, both of them must be room partners or must be sharing the same house. So they went upstairs to go to sleep. We tossed for beds. Now, since there were only two beds, on one on which Jerome, the author, is sleeping, on one George. Now, Harris doesn't have a bed because he lives somewhere else. So they had to toss for a bed, a coin. And Harris had to sleep with me. Now, there are only two beds, nobody sleeping on the ground. So with whom will Harris sleep? So they tossed. And of course, the author, he lost the toss, and that is how Harris will be sharing the bed with Jerome. He said, do you prefer the inside or the outside? J. J stands for Jerome. Uh, so, what is inside and outside of the bed? Inside the bed, usually in our household, we have the bed as a container, right? There's bed on the top, and below the bed or inside the bed, there's a container in which we stuff things, unnecessary things, and then we close the lid and put the bed on top and we sleep, right? So here it is not that inside or outside. Inside or outside means the part that faces the wall is called inside, right? The part where the bed touches the wall, that is called the inside, and outside is where the feet is. So now two people cannot sleep together on the same bed. One has to face they have to sleep their face facing the feet, right? So one has to sleep inside, one has to sleep outside so that they fit the size of the bed. I said I generally preferred to sleep inside a bed. Harris said it was odd. Yes, usually what the habit is, we usually put our pillow where the bed is touching the wall. So that is the inside. Now, if it is your bedroom, if it is your bed, then naturally you will be sleeping inside. Harry says, it is odd. Why was it odd? What time shall I wake you fellows? It's odd. Yes, I'm a guest of yours. Maybe that's the question. Or maybe when a guest comes, yes, you try to make him comfortable. So I should be sleeping inside. You should be sleeping outside. Or maybe it is some people have the habit of sleeping outside, right? That means the feet will be towards the wall rather than the head. So in whatever way it was told, it was just a remark. Yes. So George says, what time shall I wake you fellows? Harry said 7. I said no 6 because I wanted to write some letters. Yes, I wanted to get up early. I wanted to get up. Now it is already 1 o'clock. You have to remember 12:50 or 10 minutes before 1. They finished the packing, went to bed. Right, so it must be 1 o'clock round. And uh, Harry says we'll get up at 7 o'clock, but I wanted to get up at 6 o'clock because I wanted to write some letters. I needed that extra hour to write some letters because I was going on a trip. I wanted to inform lots of people or just wanted to communicate. Harris and I had a bit of row over it, but at last split the difference and says 6:30. So Harris was saying 7, I was saying 6. Right? It was no time to have a fight over it, have some argument over it. So we came to a compromise. Both of them, we are friends. So तुम्हारी भी नहीं मेरी भी नहीं 7 बजे भी नहीं 6 बजे नहीं भी 6:30. So we settled at 6:30 and we settled at 6:30. Wake us at 6:30. George, we said. George made no answer. By the time they were arguing, George was thoroughly exhausted. He went to sleep even before his head hit the pillow, and both of them, Harris and the author, they were arguing when to wake up, when to ask George to wake up. When they finally compromised, yes, and told the time, there was no reply from George because George has already gone to sleep. And we found on going over that he had been sleeping for some time. He was fast asleep while we were deciding who is going to sleep inside, outside, what time we are going to wake up. By the time George had gone fast asleep, so we went over his bed and checked whether he was sleeping soundly or not. He was sleeping soundly. So we placed the bath where he could tumble into it on getting out in the morning. All three of them are friends. Friends are the real naughty one, right? Yes, and they are going to have lots of fun with you. You are going to have lots of fun with them. So now George has gone sleep. So they, both of them, went to the bathroom, washroom, and they brought out a tub. Now, the first thing that you do when you wake up is sit up and then uh, shift your legs down on the floor. So, exactly, right? So, cold water. What happens when you all of a sudden in the morning without looking down, you put your feet and the tub is half filled with water, or in the morning you tumble down, or during the sleep you tumble down, you fall into water all of a sudden, right? So that was the purpose of having fun with George because he had gone to sleep and this was the right time to have fun. So we placed the path where he could tumble into it the first thing in the morning when he gets up from bed, and then we went to bed and made ourselves comfortable sleeping, right? So before going to sleep, just like good, true, truthful friends, they play a prank on George before going to sleep. Put the tub filled with water just near his bed. When he comes out of the bed, he is either going to tumble into that bed or he is going to fall into that tub filled with water, cold water, and he's going to scream, cry, and shout and yell at his friends, and he's going to get real angry right in the morning, the first thing. That means that much loud noise is sufficient for these two people to wake up. Right? Here in the story, we don't have anything to tell us that an alarm has been kept. Yes, alarm has been kept. Yes? So, this was a wonderful idea of an automatic alarm. The moment George is out of the bed, those two will come to know because he is going to scream and cry. wake up the whole house, right? Because his feet will be in cold water. He is going to give a yell, shout at them. He knows the prank has been played on him, right? But that is going to work as an alarm for both of them, and they are also going to wake up and be ready in time to commence the journey. So, students, we come to end of today's lecture, plus we come to an end to chapter number 7. Thank you.